In our effort to highlight Black community leadership, the Domini Hoskins Black History Museum and Learning Center is pleased to share this oral history recorded in August 2025 featuring Cherie, Chillin, Kabba, who is the founder and creator of Soultown magazine. In this interview, we discuss journalism, the power of storytelling, and the role that Soultown magazine plays in local communities. Can you tell us a little bit about what Soultown magazine is?
The Soultown magazine is a publication that started in central Iowa. The premise behind the magazine is that we would celebrate unsung heroes in communities, people that were doing great things, but they weren't getting much recognition. People, places, and things, allies to the brown and Black communities. We wanted to spotlight them, give them some ink to tell their stories.
Can you talk about why you decided to start creating these stories and why you thought they were important to share?
Way back in 2006, I traveled to West Africa. I received my first master's degree, and as a treat to myself, I wanted to travel to the place where the history book stated the African Americans come from, which was the west coast of Africa. So I traveled to Dakar, Senegal. And while I was there, I met some young people that were playing on the Atlantic Ocean. And these young people spoke like 9 different languages, some tribal languages. French is the lingua franca there. They were colonized by the French. But I asked these young people, what did they want to do when they finished high school? And they said they wanted to come to America and study business technology. And I was so fascinated that at such a young age, they wanted to study technology. I decided that I would come back home, get a second master's degree in information systems. So when those kids did graduate, come back to the States, perhaps I could be their teacher. But in this traveling back and forth, I began to meet other Senegalese, other elderly Africans, and a friend of mine that I was there in Senegal with, we traveled to the House of Slaves. And it's actually located on an island off the coast of Dakar, Senegal. And the island is called Glory Island. And during this tour of the House of Slaves, I remember as we were walking through each hall, each room, I heard a group of people kind of whispering, we have to tell you stories. And although they weren't talking to me, they were talking amongst themselves. I heard them, and I was nodding my head in agreement with them that we should find a way to tell these stories. And maybe about the second or third time I heard the whispers, I actually turned around to see who these people were on the tour with me. So I was going to engage in a conversation with them. And when I turned around, there was no one there. And so that's when I believe I had a very proven experience with my ancestors. And I felt the call from the ancestors to find a way to tell these stories. And although I didn't launch the magazine immediately upon returning to the States from Glory Island, the launch of the magazine is the manifestation of this promise that I call the Sankofa vow that I made to my ancestors.
Can you talk a little bit about the process that goes into making an issue of your magazine?
So I've calculated it takes about 80 hours a month to publish the magazine. It is 40 full color pages, and I lay the pages out myself, cover to cover. My first degree, I have an associate's degree in graphic design. So I know software programs such as Photoshop, Illustrator, InDesign, the Adobe programs that's required to lay the magazine out. And I also launched the first magazine at this newspaper in Waterloo, Iowa. The magazine was Attitudes for Women. So I had already had the background and experience on designing the magazine. It just only made sense that I would change the focus and find a niche, which was telling stories from our communities.
What is your favorite story that you've ever reported on?
I've been asked this question often. My favorite story is the very first story told in the very first magazine, which was January 2017. The story is called The Whisper, and it is a story written with the collaboration between myself and my brother. My brother is a Muslim. The cover photo is a photo of Michael Muhammad, which is my other brother, and he has in his hands my nephew, who's about 6 months at the time. And historically, when African-American babies or African babies are born, you whisper a prayer into their ears. And during that time, they hear the prayer, then it helps them along the way as they become a young man and young women. And so this image And the story is about the whisper that comes from the African culture and the prayer into the ears of the baby.
What was one of the most difficult stories that you've had to tell?
Most difficult story? I wouldn't say it's difficult. It's just that because we are now in 52 cities in 18 states, I chose to cover Juneteenth. And I wanted to make sure that I featured or highlighted a celebration that was happening in multiple communities. So anytime that you're trying to spotlight multiple stories from different cities, it's a little bit challenging making sure that the stories actually match the photos and that the captions are correct. And so that was actually the June 2025 issue where there was a culmination of, I think, 8 to 10 cities where we spotlighted celebrating Juneteenth.
One thing I'm curious about is how do you find stories?
Any city where there's a subscriber, where they subscribe to the Soultown magazine, I spend time in that city. I walk the streets. I meet business owners. I meet people. I'm very interested in people watching what they're doing, learning their professions. And I believe everyone has a story to tell. My philosophy is 2 things will happen if you don't tell your story. 1, someone else will, and quite naturally, they're going to get something wrong. Or 2, no one will, and then you'll be erased from Black history.
Do you have any stories you want to share about some people that you've met through your travels and through your storytelling?
I met the owner of Jackie's Place, a soul food restaurant in San Jose. It was Father's Day, and my daughter and I just wanted to get some really good soul food. We looked up the best soul food place in the Bay Area. Jackie's Place came. It appeared on the Google, so we traveled to Jackie's Place. We waited for about 45 minutes and we were seated. The food was so good that as we complimented the waitress, she said the chef was in the back. And we asked if we could meet the chef, the owner, and she came from behind in the kitchen area, and we talked to her, got to learn some things about her. As a result of it, I did take a photo with her, and that photo was actually on the cover of one of the Soultown magazines. Actually, I think it's right behind me.
Have you ever encountered somebody who didn't want to share their story or did so reluctantly? And how did you help support them or respect their decision?
All the time I meet people that are not interested in sharing their stories. I share my information with them so when they're ready, then I'm available. They can reach out to me. I did feature Jabari Issa. He's a former NFL player. I probably talked to him 6 months before I could convince him to tell his story. So for Father's Day, June 2025, we told the story of Jabari Issa along with his father. And the story was a gift to his father, who I believe Zubiri is 93. And he was very, very happy that the story was told. And they enjoyed the magazine. I think they ordered 50 single copies to share with family members.
What are the reactions of people when they get their story shared in the magazine?
They're happy, but I'm actually ecstatic. I just get great joy. And not only sharing the story, but actually laying the pages out visually in an appealing way. And when I see the smiles on their faces or read the text where they're excited, or once we posted on social media, some of the comments, it just makes me feel like I'm on the trajectory and the path that the creator has set for me, and I'm doing something great for my community.
What do you accredit to giving you the ability to tell these stories in the beautiful way that you tell them? Was that part of your upbringing? Was it a gift you think you have? Was it something you developed over time?
That's an interesting question. So I was introduced to spoken word poetry, storytelling at the age of 12. And I learned from poets like Nikki Giovanni, Maya Angelou, Gil Scott-Heron, Emily Dickinson, Walt Whitman. I used to skip class and hide out in the library when I was in middle school, and the most comfortable couches were the ones in the poetry section. So the more I would read, the more I became fascinated with actually telling stories. And so I think that way back when I was 12, 13 is when I became excited about it. But then when I see how other people react when their stories are told, and it's told with authenticity and accuracy, that really makes me happy, and it makes me feel like this is my purpose. It makes me feel like this is why I'm here, the publisher of the Soultown magazine.
What do you hope the legacy of your magazine is?
Well, beginning January 2026, we launch our 10th birthday. That's the year of our 10th anniversary, and we're going to expand to the Soultown TV. We're going to have a 30-minute segment on a television channel where we can then take our stories from print to actual video.
With that, what do you think the difference is between video and print in terms of being able to tell stories in this multimedia way?
Both video and print last forever. So both mediums, I think, are equal. I think it just depends on the individual that's watching or reading, but having both of them together will expand our viewership and hopefully will expand our subscribers and we'll be able to reach more of the masses.
What sort of advice do you have for somebody who wants to share their story but might be nervous to or reluctant to, or maybe doesn't even know how to do that?
I think everybody should see themselves as a book and not a story. In each book, there are chapters, and each story you choose to tell is a different chapter. So if you want to tell your story, you have to, within yourself, narrow the chapters down and figure out this is the chapter, which this is the story that I want to tell. And you yourself as a whole, just me as one person, is not one chapter. It's a book. And there may be 100 chapters in my book. I may have that many stories that I have to tell, and I can tell whatever story I want to tell and control the narrative of that story.
With that, how do you, when you're telling a story or helping somebody to tell their story, how do you make sure that they are in control of the narrative?
I definitely record the interview. I never print anything without the featured artist actually looking at the layout and reading the story first. And that allows them an opportunity for any corrections. Now, the great thing about the Soultown magazine is we don't tell bad news. We leave that up to mainstream media. So if you're doing something great, I give you the opportunity to look at your layout, make any corrections that you want, change any photos that you want, make sure names are spelled correctly, all of that stuff. This is your story, so I want it to be as perfect for you as possible.
Can you talk about why you think that's so important to make sure that it's so perfect?
I worked at a newspaper for 7 years, and I love the experience that I received from the newspaper, but we all know with newspapers, if it doesn't bleed, they don't think people read it. So sometimes there's bad news that's told. I don't want that to happen, and I don't want names to be misspelled and misconceptions of who these people are. So because of that experience, I always want to slow the process down and make sure that all of my featured artists have an opportunity to actually look at the final product.
Is there anything that you want to share in terms of your pathway to journalism? What brought you to journalism and now to here?
That's a great question. So I actually met the editor of the Waterloo Courier in Waterloo, Iowa. My former boss, his name is Saul Shapiro. I love him to death. I met him at a community study circle where we were talking about race and race relations in the community. At the time, I was actually a college student getting my degree in graphic design. And we had this moment where I challenged him to watch the series Roots on TV so he could understand the plight of Black people. And in turn, he challenged me to watch Schindler's List so that I could understand the plight of Jewish people. And we agreed to do it. A week later, we came back and had a discussion. And it was such a rich discussion. And because of that, we're still friends now. But he promised me at that community circle, when I graduated, he would give me a job. And he was the editor at the Waterloo Courier. And he did hire me once I graduated as a graphic artist and gave me a spot on the editor's page right next to him where I could write a column right next to the editor every Sunday in addition to the graphic artist. And that's when my writing began.
Do you remember what your first story was?
My first story talked about the first time I saw the series Roots on TV. I was 7 years old. I had no idea when I saw it was the first time it aired on TV.
Can you talk about why you've stayed in the field? What has kept you in journalism and graphic design and in this work?
I love words. I love the English language. I love the power of words and phrases and idioms and metaphors and similes. I just love writing stories, listening to stories, and telling stories.
It also sounds like you have a really strong sense of social justice. So I'm curious, what shaped that for you?
My mom and dad were Black nationalists. My aunt and uncle were Black Panthers. So we were raised in our household to always uplift and support Black people. Now, that doesn't mean that you ignore other races and cultures, but before you can reach out and help any allies of any other culture, you have to make sure you have the confidence and self-esteem and you're happy with the skin that you're in. And I am.
If you had a message for young people who maybe are considering journalism or maybe wanting to hear the stories of their older family members or interested in words just like you are, what message do you have for young people who might be watching this?
Read. If you want to increase your vocabulary, you read. If you want to increase your spelling, you read. If you want to read better, you read. My advice is keep reading. Read everything. Read magazines, read newspapers, read the back of the cereal box, read the ingredients on your soda pop, read everything.
Do you have any recommendations right now? One must-read book or a couple?
Yes, Gil Scott Heron, Small Talk at 125th and Lenox. Read that poetry book.
Is there anything else that you would like to share about you or your story or your journey that we didn't get to cover that you think is important to share?
I am so excited and happy that I found Miss Carolyn and she found me, and she loves the magazine, and there's an exhibit in the Domini Hoskins Black History Museum, the Learning Center. Because of that collaboration, we're going to do great things together, and I'm just so excited. Walk your streets in your city, meet your people, know the business owners, and take a few minutes just to share your story and a moment to listen to theirs.